Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Corpus Christi. I am Kirk Newport, and I'm honored to serve as your worship associate this morning. We welcome you to our worship service, celebrated here each week, mindful of the principles of our free faith. To describe a little bit about what Unitarian Universalism is today, I would like to share with you some words from Shana Lindgood. And she says, "This is a place where you're welcome, where you're invited into a fuller relationship with yourself, with the spirit of life, with other people, to build a better world and to build a better you." Although we practice a free faith, it is also one that requires responsibility. We have a church covenant, which is a shared agreement that we recite together each week and reminds us of our closely held values. The mission of this church is we learn, we lead, we love. I just want to call your attention to the announcements in the back of your order of service, and just in case you forgot, or if you're a visitor today, we have our potluck luncheon after the service today, so please stay after the service, and there's food. It is our custom in this church to offer visitors and newcomers a chance to introduce themselves, if you feel comfortable doing so. Do we have any visitors or that would like to stand up and tell us your name and who you are, where you're from? No? All right. Anyway, we welcome you here, and we hope you'll stay after the service, and we'd like to get to know you just a little bit better. And I would now like to invite you into a time of worship.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question but a lesson learned in time. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind. Hang them on a shelf in good health and good time. Tattoo of memories and dead skin on trial. For what it's worth, it was worth all the while. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. Something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life. It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you had the time of your life.
Good morning. Good morning. I hope you're all surviving this little bout of winter we're having. Our opening words and chalice lighting words are by Martha Kirby Capo, and I would like to invite Lily and Zeta up to light our chalice. For some, the chalice cup is a communion cup, freely offered to all who would seek the greater truth. Others see the circle of fellowship in its embracing sides, the sacred hoop of its rim, the ambient energy cradled in its basin, the abiding grounded strength of its pedestal. May all be lit by the fire of spiritual integrity. So too may we each be bathed in the glow of our shared truth, multifaceted and radiant. Please rise in body or spirit for the reading of our church covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all we hold sacred. You may be seated. This is one of those special Sunday mornings when we get to invite new members and friends into our congregation. So I'm going to switch microphones here. All right, I would like to invite up Darby Brittigam, Tito Perez, Dana Schenefeld, and Arlene and Joe Rincon. These, as our new members are coming up and signing our book, I would also like to acknowledge our new friends. And new friends, please stand when I call your name, and we will clap for you wildly. You can take a hint, huh? Linda Allen, Arthur Perez. Sorry. Let me finish the names first. Arthur Perez, Russ Braun, and Marta Silva, who could not be here today. All right, all please stand, and now we will clap for the friends. And while we are waiting for the signatures to be finished, I would also like to point out that Arlene and Joe Rincon brought more than 2 members. They brought 4 children into our congregation, which I think has exponentially grown our religious education program just with one family, which is wonderful. And you met Lily and Zeta lighting the chalice, but there's also Zane. Is he in the nursery? He's here. Oh, there's Zane. And where's Kyra? Kyra, wave. Yay! Okay, all right. Don't leave. New members, stay here. Tito, go back. Darby, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. You'll do some first. All right, so we're going to do our little welcoming ritual. Today, we welcome into our community these new members who have chosen to make a commitment to this congregation by signing our membership book. Now, new members, when I prompt you, you will say, I will, okay? And I'll make it really obvious. And congregation, you are going to say, we will, and I will prompt you and make it really obvious, okay? All right. New members, we are so glad to have you here with us and that you have chosen this community of fellow seekers to travel with you on your life's journeys. Will you accept our gifts of fellowship, discovery, and service? Will you offer us your unique presence and gifts? Will you add your name to the long history of Unitarian Universalists who spread hope with our living faith? Will you engage with us as we seek to create a community and a world dedicated to love and justice? I will. All right, your turn is coming up, congregation. Congregation, will you welcome these new members with the warmth and comfort of your fellowship? Will you seek to add your strengths and talents to the new gifts they bring us? Will you share our triumphs and our struggles as our community grows and changes? We will. Well, I now pronounce you new members of U2C3. All right, let's have some more wild cheering.
morning, everyone. Good morning. I'd like to invite all the children and young at heart to join me on the story quilt this morning. Come join us. We're going to need a bigger story quilt. All right, so I'm going to read a story today by Sarah E. Squire, and the name of the story is called Answer Mountain. Long ago in a faraway land, or yesterday and just around the corner, or maybe somewhere halfway in between, there was a town that sat quiet and content, tucked into the shadow of a mountain. And carved on the side of that mountain, big and tall so no one could miss them, were the words, "The answer is no." No one knew where the words came from or why they were there. They'd just always been there. But oh my goodness, the people who lived in that town cuddled into that mountain where they were glad to have those words there, because whenever the townspeople had a question, all they had to do was look up at the mountain and read it. The answer was always no. Making decisions was very simple, and life went on smoothly and easily in the town, cuddled into the mountain, until one day. Now, on that particular day, Ma Custis was about to make dinner for her family, and she just couldn't decide, because sometimes you can't, whether to make stew and steak, pasta or potatoes, dumplings or donuts. So, what do you think she did? She went out into the yard and looked at the mountain. "Now, should I make liver for dinner tonight?" she asked, and looked up at the mountain, and the mountain said, "The answer is no." "All right, I knew that really. Nobody is crazy about liver. But should I make a steak for dinner?" And the mountain said, "The answer is no." "Should I make chicken then?" And the mountain said, "The answer is no." "Should I make tacos or tofu, baked beans or broccoli, pork chops or popcorn?" The mountain said nothing, but the answer is no. Ma asked more questions until the sun disappeared behind the mountain. She kept on asking the questions until the sun came up around the other way. And all the mountain ever said was, "The answer is no." Because Ma couldn't get an answer that was any kind of answer, she and her family went all night and all the next day and all the next night without dinner. Finally, Ma just gave up and made liver anyways. Even though the mountain said no, and even though everyone hated liver, because liver was the first thing she had thought of. But Ma had had enough. She glared at the mountain, stamped her foot, and shook her fist. "Why is the answer always no? Why can't you just say yes? For once?" Ma turned around and stomped away to ring the town bell and call a town meeting. Well, when that bell rang, the whole town came running, from the oldest man with the longest beard to the youngest kids who still need carrying. No one would miss a town meeting. They all came, and they all listened carefully as Ma told her story. "Seems to me," she said, "that we've got a problem. The mountain just isn't helping us like it should. Seems to me it would be nice if it would say yes for a while." The townsfolk knew Ma had a point, but they didn't much like this idea, changing something that had been the same for so long. But after they thought, and then thought some more, they finally nodded solemnly. The mountain would have to be recarved. Mason Sharp, the stone carver, nodded along with the rest of them. He scratched his nose, adjusted his cap, and slowly gazed up the length of the mountain. Then he cleared his throat and said, in his gravely voice, "Looks to me like I could do the carving, if that's all right with you." And so it was. Mason spent the next 2 weeks up on the side of the mountain, chiseling and chipping and carving away, and coming down only when it got too dark to see. And when he was done, the mountain said, what do you think it said? "The answer is yes." Mason rang the bell and called the town together. And once again, they all came running. from the oldest woman with the whitest hair to the youngest kid who still needed carrying. They all wanted to see the new sign, and they all wanted to cheer for the stone carver and all his hard work. Ma, who had started all of this, came right up to the front of the crowd. She figured she ought to be the person to ask the first question of this new and different mountain, since she discovered the problem with the old one. She stepped right up to the foot of the mountain, looked way up to the top, and asked, "Should I make liver for dinner tonight?" And the mountain said, "The answer is yes." Well, now Ma almost fell over with surprise. But Pa told me he'd never forgive me if I served liver ever again, and all my kids threatened to hide in the barn for a week. Should I really serve liver? And the mountain said, "The answer is yes." The townspeople began to grumble. They didn't like the sound of this. Ma's family grumbled the loudest. "But, well, I can't," Ma said. I can't just serve liver again. I promised I wouldn't." "Are you telling me I should break my promise?" She looked up at the mountain. "The answer is yes." The grumbling got louder, and Ma, well, she glared at the mountain again, stamped her foot and shook her fist. And she turned to the townspeople and said, "This just isn't right. This just can't be right. What are we going to do?" Once again, the town folks put on their thinking caps. Everyone thought Ma, Pa, and all the Custis kids, who'd probably thought the hardest of all because they were worried about the liver. Very, very worried. Finally, the smallest, but one of the Custis kids piped up. "Why does there have to be just one answer? Can't we have more?" The townspeople gasped. No one had ever thought of such a thing before. They mumbled and grumbled and talked amongst themselves. Finally, they decided the mountain ought to say, "The answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no and sometimes wait and see and sometimes I just don't know." Mason, the stone carver, who had been listening to all of this talk, cleared his throat, scratched his nose and adjusted his cap, and said, "Well, I think I can do it. I don't mind, not really, even if I just did finish carving in the new change. But, well, it's going to take a lot of time, and I can't work all day long like I did the last time. How about if I work on it when I can, and we'll hang us up some kind of sign on the mountain and lets people know that the answer is a-comin'." The funny thing was that for a little while, Mason worked on the mountain every day. And for a little while, everyone in the town waited eagerly to see the new answer. But soon, the stonemason got tired of climbing the mountain every day, and everyone else got tired of waiting. And they all started asking each other questions and helping everyone else find the answers that seemed to fit in their given situation. The townspeople realized that different questions usually had different answers, that sometimes the same question had more than one answer, and that there were many more answers that they had even ever imagined. And all of that was fine with them. After a while, they thought that maybe the answer the mountain was giving them right then, just as it was better and more sensible than any other answer it had ever given. And so they left it as it was. And the mountain said, "The answer is under construction."
Good morning. As we begin our Share the Plate program, in which we will share the cash plate with local nonprofit helping organizations, we must not ignore the needs of our own members and friends. Today, we will share the plate with the U2C3 Congregant Relief Fund. This is a confidential fund managed by our minister to provide emergency assistance to congregants in need. It may be someone sitting behind you or in the next row that may need a little help with rent or utilities or some other emergency need. Any cash will be split between the relief fund and our regular church offerings. If you have a contribution and wish it to go to your pledge, please put pledge on your check or the envelope, and those envelopes are right outside the door, and it will go 100% to your pledge. Any cash or checks that do not say pledge will be split. Checks should be made out to the UU Church of Corpus Christi. So, as a colleague of mine once proclaimed, dig deep into the pocket of the person in front of you. Seriously, be thoughtful about your responsibility to help others, even when it could be the person sitting in front of you. The morning offering will now be offered or taken or whatever.
I left home when I was 17. I just grew tired of falling down. I'm sure I was told the allure of the road would be all I found. All the answers that I started with turned out questions in the end. Some years roll on by, and just like the sky, the road never ends. People who love me still ask me, when are you coming back to town? And I answer, quite frankly, when they stop building roads, and all God needs is gravity to hold me down. And I answer, quite frankly, when they stop building roads, there ain't no more highways to be found. And I answer, quite frankly, when they stop building roads, and all God needs is gravity to hold me down.
Our meditation reading today is from Richard Gilbert. In the midst of the whirling day, in the hectic rush to be doing, In the frantic pace of life, pause here for a moment. Catch your breath, relax your body, loosen your grip on life. Consider that our lives are always unfinished business. Imagine that the picture of our being is never complete. Allow your life to be a work in progress. Do not hurry to mold the masterpiece. Do not rush to finish the picture. Do not be impatient to complete the drawing. From beckoning birth to dawning death, we are in process, and always there is more to be done. Do not let the incompleteness weigh on your spirit. Do not despair that imperfection marks your every day. Do not fear that we are still in the making. Let us instead be grateful that the world is still to be created. Let us give thanks that we can be more than we are. Let us celebrate the power of the incomplete, for life is always unfinished business. After our time of silence, I invite anyone who would like to up to light a candle representing the joys and sorrows we hold with us today. I now invite you into a moment of silent contemplation.
Sit and listen,
So we're looking at the fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism today, which is known as a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And if you've been listening, you can kind of see that theme reflected in our music and in our story so well. I don't think there's much left for me to do, but I will go ahead anyway. And for the reading today, I thought I'd share this reflection written by UU minister Victoria Safford. This reading is called Map of the Journey in Progress. And in the reading, she will call our attention to places on the map of her search, of her journey. So we begin. Here is where I found my voice and chose to be brave. Here's a place where I forgave someone against my better judgment, and I survived that. And unexpectedly, amazingly, I became wiser. And here's where I was once forgiven and was ready for once in my life to receive forgiveness and be transformed. And I survived that also. I lived to tell the tale. And this is the place where I said no, more loudly than I thought I ever could. And everybody stared, but I said no loudly anyway, because I knew it must be said, and those staring settled down into harmless, ineffective grumbling, and over me, they had no power anymore. Here's a time, here's another, when I laid down my fear and walked right on into it, up to my neck in that roiling water. And here's where cruelty taught me something. And here's where I was first astonished by gratuitous compassion and knew it for the miracle it was, the requirement it is. It was a trembling time. And here, much later, is where I returned the blessing clumsily. It wasn't hard, but I was unaccustomed. It cycled round, and best I could, I sent it back on out, passed the gift along. This circular motion around and around has no apparent end. And here's a place, a murky puddle, where I have stumbled more than once and fallen. I don't know yet what to learn there. On this site, I was outraged, and the rage sustains me still. It clarifies my seeing. And here's where something caught me. A warm breeze in late winter, birdsong in late summer. Here's where I was told that something was wrong with my eyes, that I see the world strangely. And here's where I said, yes, I know. I walk in beauty. Here is where I began to look with my own eyes and listen with my ears and sing my own song, shaky as it is. Here is where, if by the surgeon's knife my heart was opened up, and here, and here, and here, these are the landmarks of conversion. Now, I was going to begin with one of those readings that would get us right away into all the nitty-gritties of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But I decided to start with this more poetic version, this personal description of the lifelong search, the lifelong journey to greater wholeness and greater awareness and greater self-understanding, this map that Victoria Safford describes in such vivid detail. After all, if these journeys are deep and skim way below the surface, are more than simply intellectual pursuits, these journeys will get really messy. They may be seen as maps of rage or confusion, but compassion as well. They leave trail markers as we learn about ourselves, our relationships, and this tragic and miraculously beautiful world we live in. At first, I was really surprised by the last sentence of the reading. It caught me really off guard. It says, these are the landmarks of conversion. And that's like some super really religious term for a UU kind of person to digest. I mean, when I think of conversion, as maybe you do, you think of when someone changes religions most often so they can get married. We all know someone who's converted to Catholicism or Judaism, right? That's what I think of when I hear conversion. But that's not what she was talking about when she wrote, "These are the landmarks of conversion." So I kind of scanned my brain to figure out what in the world she could have meant by this. And so I looked up the meaning of the word conversion. And the dictionary definition wasn't helpful. It said conversion is an experience associated with a definite and decisive adoption of a religion. That wasn't helpful. But although Victoria Safford is a UU, it's clear, she isn't talking about any particular religion. It's much more personal than that. She can't be talking about conversion in that way. And so by now I was just completely baffled because I loved the reading except for the last word. So I continued my research to understand it. So I went back to our UU history, to our uptight Puritan ancestors, and conversion was a really, really big deal to them. And although we no longer share just about any theology with the Puritans, as we are today, they were mostly a religion of converts, people who came in voluntarily rather than those people who were born in the religion. And to become a Puritan, you had to have a conversion experience and be able to talk about it convincingly to the congregation you wanted to join. Because the Puritans, you see, were strict Calvinists, believing that human beings were depraved sinners and that God had chosen a few people, the elect, for salvation. So, in the mid-17th century, if you wanted to join a Puritan church, you had to appear before all of the members and tell the story of your religious conversion. In effect, to give convincing verbal evidence that your soul was saved. I think our new members are probably breathing a sigh of relief now that we don't do that anymore. But of course, Victoria Safford wasn't talking about saving souls either, at least in that literal sense. Maybe about saving souls in a more figurative way. But I finally found a shorthand definition of the type of Puritan conversion. And it finally made sense. The shorthand definition of conversion means conversion is a testimony of personal religious experience. It is a testimony of personal religious experience. It's a little easier to buy off on that one. So when Victoria Safford is saying these are the landmarks of conversion, describing all the places on her map, she's saying these are the landmarks of my personal religious experience. The map of her journey in progress that she describes so well describes the landmarks of her personal religious experience in her life. I think it would probably be a helpful exercise if all of us mapped these landmarks of our lives as well. Now, it can be said that religion, any religion really, is all about making meaning, about human beings trying to make sense of their existence and find answers to the most mysterious of life's questions. Fred Muir, a retired UU minister who served our congregation in Annapolis, Maryland for decades, he actually wrote a 4,000-word essay about our fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And 4,000 words, by the way, is enough for 2 whole sermons. So I'm going to give you kind of the abridged version. But in this 4,000-word essay, he makes a similar point about meaning-making being a lifelong and never-ending religious activity. He writes, "It's a free and responsible search for truth and meaning that has brought many through our doors, filling the deep, empty place. What some have called the soul often means finding the truth, giving life value. This is what religion is all about. Not only in UUism, but in any religion. UUism affirms not only a search for truth and meaning, but also that the search is where it's at. The journey is what it's all about. To search is an answer in and of itself." Now, some won't agree. To them, religious search is an oxymoron. They say the purpose of religion is to find the answer, to bring the search to an end, or at the very least get pointed toward the end. What is important about this search, about the you journey, is actually living it. So Fred Muir goes on to explain several characteristics of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, if one is to practice this principle thoroughly and with integrity. First, he says, we must have humility. To demonstrate, he offers this story from Anthony de Mello. There was once a great teacher who received a visitor. The visitor promptly told him that she was a seeker of truth. The teacher said, if what you seek is truth, there is one thing you must have above all else. Interrupting, the student answered, I know, an overwhelming passion for it. No, said the teacher, the thing you must have above all else is an unremitting readiness to admit that you may be wrong. Fred Muir concludes, we must be aware of and humbled by our shortcomings, fears, uncertainties, and contradictions. So the second essential quality of doing a free and responsible search, according to our friend Fred, is the awareness of oneself and others. To be honest, authentic, and open is vital to religious searching and living. Awareness of where your experiences come from, and where they are leading. Awareness of how others respond to your search. Awareness of who and what makes you comfortable and what makes you anxious. And being able to verbalize both. Awareness of former religious traditions and what you find affirming and challenging. Awareness of motivations and resistance and tendencies all can be critical to your search. A third quality for practicing the fourth principle, according to Fred Muir, is being non-judgmental. And this really reminds me of the fourth stage of spiritual development we talked about, which is known as the mystic or the post-critical stage. At this stage, you've surpassed the need to tear down spiritual and religious ideas and are ready to build them up into something new. Muir says the fourth principle doesn't say the, but it says a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So it's not one single search we're talking about. Everyone will have a different one. And being non-judgmental doesn't mean that there won't be disagreements on the search. Non-judgmental means that disagreements don't become personal attacks or insults or thoughtless stereotypes. Disagreements are treated respectfully and as opportunities for learning and understanding. Now, the fourth feature, according to Fred, of the search is balance. He says, the search is a journey, not a race. It's a long, deliberate, and thoughtful quest, not a scavenger hunt. It's for a lifetime, not until the next book comes out or the next fad begins. And I'd say that another aspect of balance has to do with the free and responsible part of the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Because free and responsible are words that are together not by accident, right? Free and responsible, they hold this tension between them. They're actually a safeguard that your search doesn't become so free it fails to consider the needs and the existence of others, consider our interdependence with others. I mean, trampling the rights and the opinions and the feelings of others or abandoning responsibility towards others in favor of a spiritual quest is really not the marker of a healthy search. And although a search may be one's own, it doesn't take place in a vacuum, and it's not an excuse for selfishness. So the fifth feature of our search for truth and meaning is learning. UUs are pretty good at this one. Every insight or revelation, each time there's a breakthrough moment or a big aha, it's not dismissed, but it's embraced and valued and celebrated. Ram Dass, I love this quote, remarked that the spiritual journey is falling on your face and starting over. Our journey is a learning experience instead of a search for a definitive answer. Fred Muir says a free and responsible search for truth and meaning also requires being engaged with the world instead of transcending it. Giving up your earthly mission and meaning in favor of a future, a perhaps heavenly future, is an example of this. Or becoming so focused on achieving a state of enlightenment or nirvana at the cost of participating fully in the life you have. These are some examples of the dangers of not being engaged in the world. There's a difference between tapping into what is greater, which is a really good thing, and using your spirituality as a simple escape fantasy. A free and responsible search engages life not in a distant or transcendent location or reality. It's a search in the here and now. Finally, we're rolling towards the end here. Fred Muir says, our free and responsible search for truth and meaning requires focused attention. Intentionality and deliberateness are crucial. Our search isn't a casual thing. It's not a hobby. When we embrace our searches like a beacon directing us down a path, when our desire for truth and meaning becomes a religious search, it receives our attention, our focus, because the light of truth and meaning cannot be ignored. And I'd agree that focused attention is really important, like the need to stick to a spiritual practice to be able to gain the insights and benefits from it. And I found that one thing about the openness of our religion is that it may lend itself towards superficial dabbling in spiritual ideas and practices. And exploration is great, but if eventually there's no intention and no commitment and no structure, no reflection involved in our search for truth and meaning, we may learn a lot of really, really cool stuff. But in the end, we're really only spinning our wheels and not really catching the depth of meaning and significance of our life's journeys. Finally, Fred Muir tells us to remember that we're not journeying alone. Our principles, all of them, the preamble to that is, we covenant to affirm and promote. And we covenant is the language of religious community. Our free and responsible search, although an individual journey, is done together. The late UU pagan Margot Adler said, to be truthful about it, not everything comes from personal experience and revelation. There are times when gut and heart and intuition are not enough, and it's important to have a reality check. People who will bring us down to earth. I know I often need a reality check. I don't know about you. But Muir says, the value and role of a congregation, the community of like-minded searchers, is what gives our individual journeys support and context. It gives each one of us reasons to keep our search free and responsible. And there is much to be learned on a journey. Covenanting together as a congregation and not alone, we can walk the search, sharing what we learn, discovering that while the truth and meaning we seek could be as different and unique as each of us are, our desire for religious wholeness or oneness, our dream of peace for our world and peace within ourselves, is a purely common one. So, to wrap things up today, I'm going to let you know that at our potluck following the service, we'll be talking about shared values and be asking for your input for an updated version of our congregation's statement of shared values. And I'd like to ask you to think about, in your own free and responsible search for truth and meaning, what you value most, particularly in the context of our church community. And finally, I'd like to wish us all well on our personal journeys in progress. May the map of your journey, your search for truth and meaning, overflow with all those things Fred talked about: humility and awareness and non-judgment and balance and learning and engagement with the world and focus. And always remember that no matter where you are on your map of your personal journey and progress, you are never traveling alone. Blessed be and amen.
thing you've ever done for me is to help me take my life less seriously. It's only life after all. Yeah.
Well, darkness has a hunger that's insatiable, and lightness has a call that's hard to hear. I wrap my fear around me like a blanket. I sail my ship of safety till I sank it.
I'm crawling on your shores.
I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains.
There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive, the closer I am to find. Yeah, the closer I am to find. Yeah.
I went to see the doctor of philosophy, with a poster of Rasputin and a beard down to his knees. He never did marry or see a B-grade movie. He graded my performance. He said he could see through me.
I spent 4 years prostrate to the higher mind. Got my paper and I was free.
I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains.
There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line.
Less I see my soul, closer I am to find.
Yeah,
Closer I am to find.
yeah. I stopped by the bar at 3 a.m. to seek solace in a bottle or possibly a friend. I woke up with a headache like my head against a board, twice as cloudy as I'd been the night before, and I went in seeking clarity. I
Went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains. We go to the doctor, we go to the mountains, we look to the children, we drink from the fountain. Yeah, we go to the Bible, we go through the workout, we read up on revival, we stand up for the lookout.
There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And the less I seek my source for some definitive,
Closer I am to find. Closer I am to find. Closer I am to
I think we're all getting a little closer to fine this morning. Our closing words are from Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace.